our next question from Grace. She asks, what's your perspective, or what perspective do you have on using medication or prescription medication versus alternative or natural healing?
Grace, that is a great question and a very loaded answer that I'll try to kind of summarize a bit, because people have asked me a lot, especially after reading the book, you don't believe in medicine. And no, that is not what we're saying, because there are really great medications that have been developed that have given people improved life, improved quality of life. There's medications that have been developed that have decreased these huge conditions, right? And I was going to say pandemic, but then people would go to coronavirus and COVID, and that's too fresh to be talking about. But I'm talking back to like plagues, polio, like these things that really created a lot of chaos. There's now these things that can help prevent those from happening. You have a really bad infection, there's really good antibiotics that have been made to help get rid of those things. So there is a time and a place for medicine. You know, type 1 diabetes. There's now synthetic insulin that they're able to put in because their body's not able to make insulin. That is needed for that condition, for that person to live and to be active and to really be able to do things. So there's really good reasons to be using medications. So it depends on what is the medicine being used for. And that conversation gets a little tricky, because if it's being like an opioid being used for pain, likely not appropriate. A statin being used because you have high cholesterol, not appropriate. Maybe at some point it is appropriate, but it's only appropriate after that person's been educated that the number needed to treat for that is 1 in about 300, meaning that that amount of people need to take it before one person has a positive benefit from that. How about we get you on a walking program, we get you moving, we get you eating the right amount of calories, we decrease your internal load, decrease your stress. That's going to decrease your cholesterol much more than a statin. What's one of the biggest side effects of a statin? Myalgia and arthralgia, so muscle pain and joint pain. So now you're taking this thing, but being told to go move and do this, but your joints and muscles hurt. So how are you supposed to go do that thing when this thing's preventing you from doing that?
Yeah.
So there are cases where the statin or other medications, just using that as an example, because I've seen it many times, people come in and we go through this big evaluation, we do all these objective tests, and I'm not finding anything neuromuscularly or musculoskeletally or anything psychosocial. And we look back in their history, oh yeah, you know what? I got increased from 20 milligrams to 40 milligrams of that statin, and then my symptoms came on a week after that. Oh, well,
there it is.
There's your muscle pain, right? So there are times that this medicine is not appropriate. And where that's really become a big thing is that a lot of our country runs on the income that pharmaceutical companies are making. So these things are being handed out like candy because nobody's getting paid to give a walking program. And by that, I mean through systems. Like people are paying out of pocket for that, but insurance companies aren't paying for that. Medicare is not paying for that. So it becomes really tricky. So when do we start looking at, and I want to differentiate alternative versus holistic healing, because I think that's something that also comes up often. Alternative healing is still seeking some sort of thing to make the outcome happen. So we have traditional medical care, and we have alternative healing, which is physical therapy, chiropractor, acupuncture, things like that. A lot of people say, well, that's holistic, that's natural. No. Natural is your body taking care of it because it's already been built with all the mechanisms that it needs to heal. Sometimes we just need to get out of the way. So that's natural healing. Holistic healing may open up the window, and medicine may open up the window for natural healing to occur. So how do you know which one to seek? Well, it depends on the condition that you're presenting with. I would say that part is important. 2, it depends on your values and your belief system of what you want to seek. And then 3, it also depends on what you're being fed, and not the sense of nutrition, but the information that the provider is giving you in that. Because whether it's in medicine, whether it's in alternative healing, whether it's in holistic healing, there's snakes in the field. There's snakes in the field selling these things, knowing very well that it's not doing a darn thing, but they're selling it because it's paying their bills, it's paying for their house, it's paying for all these things. So you have to really take ownership of the information that you're getting and ask, is that really true? And how is it creating that outcome?
Mhm.
And the way that we look at that is, well, has there been any research done on this, or is it completely anecdotal?
Mhm.
Meaning that it's just claims that are being made. We're talking about castor oil the
Yeah,
other night
yesterday,
at a
yeah.
dinner. And, our friend was saying, oh, I watched this thing and they said that castor oil does all this stuff for skin. It does,
Very TikTok trendy and
yeah, it does X, Y, and Z. And I'm like, well, dang, I should look this up because it could be beneficial. And if it's beneficial, I want to recommend it to people. So I look it up, and the only thing that has been supported is that it used to be used as a laxative
Mhm.
for people.
Mhm.
But there's nothing on skin, there's nothing on hair growth, there's nothing on it. It's all anecdotal. So when we only have anecdotal evidence, we then have to question, is the thing actually working for the reasons that people are saying that it's working, or is it placebo?
Yeah.
And if it's placebo, I don't want you to get annoyed or go, oh, it's all in my head. No, placebo means I shall please. What a beautiful way to say, can I please heal myself? Like,
Mm.
that's all a placebo is. It's your body healing itself with whatever stimulant was saying that it was. No, it's just your body doing that. So placebos are not a bad thing. What we should look at with a placebo is that the placebo is empowering you, that you don't need that thing. Your
Mhm.
body can already do that on its own. You just had to be coached into that happening.
Yeah.
And you can coach yourself into it. You can reach out and have a coach that's going to do it, but you don't need this pill. You don't need this injection. You don't need this other thing to do this. And a little bit of a rant, but another research article that came out recently was looking at injections into the knee for knee osteoarthritis. Very common misconception of what knee osteoarthritis is. I won't dive into it on this episode. Maybe we can answer that on a different episode. But people are seeking injections, whether it's a PRP injection, whether it's hyaluronic acid into the knee, but Synviscus. There's all these different injections that people are putting in. Well, research came out showing that doing a saline injection, which is just salt water, and no, there's not any special properties in the salt water. It was just to serve as a placebo. The saltwater injection had the same outcome as all the other injections that people are paying $1,000, $2,000, $3,000 for. So when that's happening, when you're coming out of your pocket paying all this money and you're being sold this misinformation or sold these lies, you really have to take that step and go, huh, if the saline did that, and I have the power of my mindset and mental fortitude and physical activity to reach that goal, why don't I invest in that?
Mm. Oh, that's so good. And I was, as you were talking, I was going to bring up the placebo thing because I know that we had someone say to us once, like, well, if placebos work, we should just use placebos. And yes, maybe, but not always. And
Mm-hmm.
we've also had someone say to us, like, or we've had experiences where we know people are using placebos, but they're not ready to admit that it's a placebo, and if we told them it was a placebo, they wouldn't believe us. And so it's tough because you're right, like our bodies want to heal, and sure, maybe the placebo has been a catalyst, but we really believe that when you get rid of the placebo, you're still going to continue to heal because you're getting out of your own way for your body to heal in the way that it's meant to and it desires to.
Absolutely. And I will say that this is not our opinion, like has become what we're saying, but the reason is because of all the research that has been done on
Mhm.
this. Surgical placebos, medical placebos, exercise placebos, nutritional placebos, all these things show that it's really the person's brain believing that this thing has happened, which a lot of people again get discouraged. I get encouraged.
Mhm.
I get excited because that's telling me that your body's already ready to do these things.
Yeah.
Let's do it.
Mhm.
Let's get all that stuff out of there. Now again, if it's a condition that needs a medicine, then let's use that medicine. But if it's a condition that isn't requiring that medicine, let's really dive into getting you to be able to heal yourself without all these extra things.
Mhm. And I want to offer, like, if our listeners are like, well, what about me? What about my situation? We may not know your entire medical history, but if you want to reach out to us on our website, hopenotnope.org, we can at least try and help in the situation if you're curious about, what about my situation or what have you. Like we want to support you in this because we we believe it because it's true. And we, in a previous episode, we talked about, well, how do we know it's true? How do we find this research? And so if you haven't listened to that, go listen to our previous episode where we talk about how to research because it's not like we didn't just decide one day that this is a thing. Like this is factual truth. So,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah. And quickly diving into that, because a lot of people, well, how did you get to that truth? Well, because I am a sports physical therapist. And when I was in school, I really wanted to be a sports physical therapist. So in that, I started researching all the different modalities that athletes are using: infrared, shockwave, ultrasound, manipulation, scraping, name the procedure, the methodology. I have researched it because I wanted to know, should I be using this with the athletes that I'm working with? And from that research, they have all concluded the same thing.
mm,
And it always goes back to, it depends on what that person is being educated about that modality, and whether you did the modality for the reason that it was taught, or you did it another way, but you set up the stage, the outcome was going to be similar
mm,
in the sense they could have it or not have it and have the same outcome, and it's placebo based. So know that this is coming from 7 to 10 years of researching this in all different areas of health to see how can we best serve that person that is in front of us.
mhm,
And I will go on to say that this doesn't mean that we're not using manual therapy.
mhm,
This doesn't mean that we're not using some of these techniques, but the education behind it is the key. We're not saying when we do this spinal adjustment, your vertebrae is going back into place because it was out of place. We're saying all we're doing is forming a bubble, and that bubble likely is going to give you some short term relief. When you have that short term relief, now your threshold is changing. Now let's do some exercise to strengthen that area that might be deconditioned, that's creating some discomfort. Let's also dive into some internal load, because now that you're not as agitated because of your pain response, now we can start to have a better conversation.
mhm.
But at no point are we saying, oh, this your SI joint was out and now it's going back in, because it's not happening.
Yeah.
It's not happening.
Yeah, we honestly, I try to not say this every episode, but I feel like we could talk about this for a while.
Yeah.
But for time's sake, let's hop on to the next question. But
Mhm.
again, listeners, if you want to dive into this more, or if you have a follow-up question based off of what we already asked, head over to our website, hopenotnope.org, or to our Instagram, hopenotnope, and ask us the question. And
Mhm.
we can either answer it directly to you in that moment, or we'll answer on a future podcast.